A hush fell over the Great Pyramid as dusk burnished the harbor of Meereen in molten copper. Daenerys Targaryen stood barefoot in the Hall of Lapis, the chill of the polished tiles a steadying counterpoint to the fevered tremor inside her chest. Shafts of dying sunlight coursed between the pillars, painting the last of day across the broken mosaics of the harpy she had already torn from its perch. In those rays glimmered the 3 eggs, dragons yet unborn, worlds yet unclutched, resting on tiers of black velvet as dark as the night that once swallowed Valyria. She had paced these stones each twilight for half a moon's turn, waiting for the lattice of omens that would tell her which egg must wake first and whether the fire of her old blood still ran potent enough to stir it. There had been whispers from the Red Temple, and an old Targaryen lay sister at Astapor had sworn that in the moon of the Turncloak, the 3rd egg would quicken. But prophecies were nets, and she'd learned how deftly nets could strangle. Of the 3, the green gold egg called to her least. Its shell shimmered like frosted jade, glyphic fractures running through the lacquer of scales. She had once thought it belonged to Rhaegal, as Rhaegar's memory deserved emerald wings. Yet in the long nights when even the harborside drums fell silent, she sometimes felt that Rhaegal already circled her dreams, fully hatched somewhere beyond the black door of sleep. Tonight her hand moved instead to the pale egg, streaked in ivory and cream, faintly luminous as sea-star bone, Viserion's. She had named it for the brother who'd driven her to fear, to flight, to exile, and who had died shrieking beneath melted gold. Naming a dragon after him had once been a small mercy, a chance to remember the boy he had been instead of the mad wraith he became. But as she lifted the egg, she wondered if mercy might at last become power. Daario Naharis waited at the foot of the dais, one hand on the hilt of his arak, eyes devouring her profile as they always did. Beyond him lingered Missandei with parchment and quill, ever ready to codify the decrees of a queen who spent more hours with dragons than with ministers. Grey Worm stood beside the door, inscrutable behind his insect helm. The unsullied captain would have stood there if the pyramid had burned around him. "Your Grace," Daario murmured, voice roughened by smoke from the brazier she'd ordered filled with sweet orange oil. "If you stay past sunset, the priests will start rambling about eclipses and blood moons. Let them find verses enough to choke on," she answered, running her palm over the cool lacquered scales. "This city has 1,000 riddles, but only one truth that matters. Dragons decide whom wind and tide obey, and dragons heed neither priest nor sellsword." She descended the steps. The brazier's flames kissed the egg, painting amber veins beneath the ivory shell. Heat seeped into her wrists first, a tingling ache like frostbite thawing. When the sensation crept to her elbow, she almost let go, but something coiled within the egg, pulsed back at her, as if 2 heartbeats had met between her palms. The mosaic floor heaved underfoot, or so it seemed. Tiles popped in faint staccato. Steam ghosted from the brazier. Daario's hand drifted away from his arak in sudden awe. The shell cracked. Hairline at first, then a lightning fork across the equator. Another heartbeat beat against her palms. Hers, the hatchlings, both. She felt droplets on her cheeks, and realized they were tears shed without noticing. Tears not of sorrow nor gladness, only of something vast and unsayable, finally loosed. A shriek echoed in the hall, softer than Drogon's first roar, delicate, raw, the cry of a creature born too soon to know its own lungs. Pale shards fell away, exposing a snout slim and translucent, its scales milk-white fading to gold at the ridges. Eyes like holes behind candle wax opened, fixed on her, and the little maw parted in questing hunger. "Viserion," she whispered. The name trembled from her, a word of salt and moonlight. "You are of my blood, and I am of yours. Let the world remember." She did not notice when her sleeves smoked, or when the velvet blazed. Flame curled round the dragonette, but no heat singed her. He crawled into the cradle of her arms, damp wings folding like silk scarves. Daario knelt. Grey Worm knelt. Missandei wept openly now. Outside, the dusk drums ceased, replaced by a hush rolling outward through Meereen, as if the air itself had knelt. "Rhaenandei." The days that followed gathered like thunderclouds too ponderous to break. She kept Viserion hidden in the innermost chambers, deep beneath the pyramid, buried behind retaining walls of fired brick. The chamber smelled of warm slate and dragon musk. Coal braziers ringed the circular pit, offering flickers of light dancing on ridged hatchling scales that swelled in length almost nightly. Worm to mastiff, mastiff to small horse. She fed him goats first, then the carcasses of shackled boars from Astapor's pens. He exhaled hot ribbons of sulfur that blistered her sleeve when she reached too close. Yet she reached each night nonetheless, pressing brow to brow, promising in Viserion that one day the skies would know his shadow. But the city above bristled. The sons of the Harpy carved new secret tunnels. Astapor's red priests preached that only sacrifice of noble blood could still the dragon demon below. Even the freedmen muttered that another monster would doom fragile freedom. In the throne room, Hisdar Zolorak read a scroll from Yunkai, demanding reparations for harbor dues lost to blockade. She barely heard him. She could see only the arc of a white dragon sweeping northward across winter skies. Could feel it as though Viserion's fledgling mind already played wistful visions across her own. She dreamed of snow, of wolves silhouetted against hissing auroras. She saw a boy in black furs on a rampart of ice, his eyes dark as a night sea. She felt him turn as if sensing her presence, though half a world lay between them. Snowflakes whisked from his lashes. A horn sounded far off, hollow and dread. In her dream she whispered, "Dragon," and his mouth moved in silent echo. When she woke, she ordered Seaworth, Sir Davos, newly come from Dragonstone, before her. He had sailed through the stepstones with news from Westeros, tales of a dead king reborn in smoke, of a bastard at the wall, with honor too heavy for mortal shoulders, of white shadows stirring beyond the frostfangs. "Sir Davos," she said, Viserion's thin tail coiled about her boot. "How heavily does the North wait for fire?" "A fire they do not trust, your grace," Davos admitted, his stump hidden in a leather glove, voice rough as docks at ebb tide. "They know dragons only as doom from old tales. Yet the night grows longer even at midday, and the wall is but a wall. Stone and ice cannot bleed, cannot breathe. Men at Castle Black send ravens begging for allies. But the South bickers over crowns." Dim? She felt the old wound of exile redden in her. A wound cut by the realm that had murdered her father and stolen her brother's dreams. Yet she also felt pity for small folk who would never know her, but who would burn all the same should darkness fall. If she must earn Westeros, let her earn it first with a gift it could not scorn. Not the whip, not wildfire, but a dragon unleashed upon the dark itself. A promise forged in flame, sent ahead of her banners. When shall Viserion, still small enough to roost on a man's shoulders, took flight from the high terrace on the fourth evening of the serpent moon. His wings, spurred spines of palest gold, beat through the heavy Meereenese heat with a sound like sailcloth ripping. She watched from the parapet beside Missandei, the city hazed in torch smoke below. "Will he know the way, your grace?" "He will know the call of what waits," she said. "I have shown him every dawn the frost that creeps down a window pane, and he has tasted ice chips from a mountain stream. The song of winter calls to him as surely as blood." She had pressed the points of her fingers to his ivory scales each night, and pictured ghostly ramparts, gray wolves, weirwood eyes crying red sap. Perhaps dragons could smell memory, could imprint on visions. She believed. Believing was all she could do. Viserion circled once above the pyramid, trailing a thin jet of flame like brushstroke across the dusk, then arrowed northwest into the vault of cloud. A hush settled. Not a hush of fear, but of breath collectively held by thousands in streets and terraces. Even those who loathed her felt awe. Somewhere below, a harpy mask clattered to cobbles, as the sun realized spears meant nothing against such wings. "Oh, Windedimnian." 9 nights later, on a merchant cog out of Pentos, a deckhand glimpsed a pale comet rip northward, tail of fire curling in its wake. He crossed himself thrice and told no one. But rumors multiplied. By the time old Volantine galleys reached Bravos, the story had grown. A ghost dragon haunting the moonlit sky. Breath white as frost, eyes burning gold. Sailors said they tasted ashen wine, felt static prickling in beards. The Iron Bank's tilemen scoffed. Yet 3 ravens left the Black Pearl that dawn, bound for White Harbor, Gulltown, River Run Cot. 1. In the gift, beneath sentinel pines heavy with rime, a war-handed ranger named Olivar glimpsed what he thought was the ghost of the old ice dragon Old Nan had sworn lived in the night winds. The creature banked above the dusky tree line, scales catching pallid auroras, flame alight flickering along the frozen river like dawn glimpsed through ice. Olivar fell to his knees in damp snow and pressed gloved fists to his eyes. But when he looked again, the dragon dove beyond the wool hooves, westward toward the shivering sea, and was gone. He reached Castle Black breathless before moonset. Jon Snow heard the tale in the Lord Commander's solar, and though Master Aemon spoke peace, Samwell Tarly fetched every cracked tome on Valyrian Spore and Skagos myths. Jon climbed the wall that midnight, scanning the amethyst sky. The torch in his fist guttered fitfully, wind slashing frost against his beard. Somewhere far north, a thunderhead pulsed white on the horizon, silent and immense, too distant for weather. Jon whispered to the emptiness, "If you are truly come, then come quickly." The wind tasted of brimstone and pine. Wine? Back in Meereen, Daenerys learned the first rumor 3 days after departure. Carried by a Pentoshi grain ship docking under flag of truce. The captain's eyes shone fever-bright as he bowed. "It was the color of new snow, your grace, yet with flame beneath, a thing of terror and sudden beauty." The sailors swore it sought some far northern star. She dismissed him with a purse of silver and retreated to the Hall of Lapis. Alone, she pressed fingertips to cool tile and tried to feel the flutter in her chest that answered Viserion's flight. It came, a ghost of heat, a phantom wingbeat. The dragon had not perished. He flew true. Yet with each new report, her counsel frayed. Hisdar demanded the dragon be recalled, lest Yunkai interpret it as a threat. Dario urged unleashing Drogon and Rhaegal as well, to cow the whole Slavers' Bay at once. Ser Barristan alone understood what she attempted. "A queen's feet must tread where her heart means to rule," he counseled. "But a dragon may carry her heart ahead and prepare the path." She dreamed that night of black banners bearing a white dragon sigil above the wall, of men in fur cloaks bowing to fire. Viserion, for his part, followed instinct and ghostly tug. He hunted oryx on the rolling grasslands of the Dothraki Sea, blackened them with licking flame, and devoured the charred meat in greedy gulps. He slept curled about ancient stone menhirs where even the khals dared not tread. Each dawn, he rose on updrafts scented with horses and distant snow. Across the Skagosi currents, he flew through sleet so thick, his pale wings vanished in the maelstrom. He soared over Hardhome, scattering crows, skimming the sea cliffs where whites clambered in fetid hordes. Fire lanced from his maw, and the dead shrieked as bone and rags became whirling cinders. On the 14th night from Meereen, he sighted the wall, a white blade cleaving the star-flecked dark. Gliding above its battlements, he loosed a trumpet call, half challenge, half greeting, and the wind carried it down the 700-foot curtain of ice until it shook the stones of Castle Black. Jon Snow was on guard all that night. He felt the rampart tremble, looked up, and saw a pale shadow crossing the moon, embers trailing its throat. Ghost at his side stiffened, hackles bristling yet silent, as though the direwolf knew that to howl would sunder this moment's fragile spell. The dragon wheeled once beyond the western reaches and vanished into dark beyond torch glow. But Jon felt heat linger on his cheek, a warmth deeper than torch fire, an answer to a prayer he had never dared voice. Gund. At dawn, the raven arrived at Meereen. Short line, four in hand. Snow keeps watch. Fire has come. No seal, no sigil. Yet she knew whose eyes had penned it. Her breath caught. For an instant, she tasted winter on her tongue. She rose from the map table, palm drifting over the painted north. "Summon my captains," she commanded. "The war for slavers may wane, but the war for dawn is upon us." Grey Worm's voice rasped. "Shall we sail, Khaleesi?" "Soon," she said, though she felt the deck already tilting under her feet. A true queen does not abandon her freedmen. "We will finish what we began here. But the North will know first that I am their ally." She would send missives aboard the Windblown, words of alliance sealed with dragonfire. She would let the lords of Westeros argue whether a Targaryen queen could be trusted, while frost and shadow gathered. Viserion would teach them that dragons were no longer tales chained in crumbling towers. They were living, white-hot truth soaring the long night sky. While Meereen nursed its precarious peace, the dragon's presence at the wall upended every vow sworn in the Watch. Old Bowen Marsh muttered that Targaryen witchcraft would melt the cherished oath of neutrality. The cynical scorned it as sorcerer's fancy. Yet the wildlings camped south of the wall spoke of a pale spirit walker who scorched the land beyond, their stories inked with awe and dread. In silent corridors, Jon weighed counsel. A dragon's flame could sear through white and other alike, yet would the beast obey command? Was it sign of an ally or herald of conquest? When he sent a raven south, it carried the words, "Fire is come. Ask not if we want it. Ask if we can afford its absence." Far beyond Hardhome, night gathered in a ruined holdfast where blue-eyed sentinels waited among icicled ramparts. The waxing moon lit frost-encrusted armor. A silence lay heavy as the grave until the wind shifted, and a drifting ember settled upon a crow-pecked skull. The pale spark hissed, then flared into a tiny red spiderweb of heat. Ice melted round it, droplets hissing. A dozen other heads turned in unison to the smear of ash. In their mirror-bright eyes shimmered flickers of dragonfire, distant but nearing. And Daenerys Targaryen, mother of dragons, paced her terrace beneath the blood-drugged nebula of the Meereenese night, feeling each heartbeat of her far-flown child echo in her own. She had loosed fire into the cold to herald her coming, and already the world was shifting. Yet for now she must tame the city she had sworn to defend. For a queen who cannot hold her nearest throne cannot hope to claim the frost-shackled ones across the world's curve. She gazed northward, across leagues of desert and sea, until horizons bled into dream. "Fly swift, my son," she murmured, the old Valyrian thick on her tongue. "Show them what rises when a dawnbringer spreads his wings." Below, oil lamps sputtered in the harbor, twin reflections trembling on black water. Somewhere inside the pyramid Drogon and Rhaegal stirred, restless to taste the open sky. But she would keep them close a while longer, even as their brother nipped at the night's cold throat. The dance had begun, not the dance of banners and swords, but of wind and ash, of ice meeting living flame. And Daenerys felt the pulse of it, the slow, inexorable rhythm, like the first drumbeat before a war that would either end the world or shatter its chains forever. Daybreak over Meereen slid in on sighs of rose-gray light. A mist rising from the river Skahada-san that left the harbor masted in ghost sails and pearl hush. Daenerys Targaryen stood on the apex balcony of the Great Pyramid with her forearms braced against a sandstone balustrade warm from her own restless touch. The quilt of city roofs below looked soft enough to lie upon, but every beam concealed daggers, every courtyard harbored whispers. Since Viserion's flight, the balance inside Meereen had shifted in ways visible only to those who had lived its dust. She felt the change as a tremor in glass when horsemen ride hard through streets, a vibration that flickered across the copper bowls of market stalls and made sleeping dogs raise their snouts. She had dreamed in the night that she walked a road of mirrors, each pane reflecting a different Meereen. One aflame, one drowned by tidal flood, one half buried beneath ash as dragons wheeled overhead. In the last mirror, she saw herself garbed in dark Stygian mail, as though prepared for winter's wars, and behind her throne loomed the spectral outline of a pale dragon whose scales shimmered like shards of moon. Every reflection whispered the same warning: hold fast or be shattered. Below, the plaza surrounding Yunkai's embassy crawled with banners of orange and indigo. Hizdahr zo Loraq had convinced her to grant the envoys safe passage. Yunkai proffered peace terms again, but the parchment reeked of ransom. She would indulge them for a morning, nothing more. What mattered lay thousands of leagues away, where her dragon traced circuits above a dying wall. Yet she could not abandon the city unfinished. The freed folk still gathered by the hundreds on Hiskari Way for bowls of beetle broth. The remaining fighting pits trembled with discontent, their owners bankrupting themselves, bribing mercenaries to stir her wrath. More dangerously, the sons of the Harpy had stopped killing. No unsullied lay gutted in alley mouths. No shavipate heads turned on spikes. When a foe ceased bleeding, it did not mean surrender. It meant waiting. She pulled back from the railing, the dawn breeze teasing her hair. Footsteps approached across the mosaic floor. Soft leather soles, deliberate pauses. Only Sir Barristan Selmy walked that way. Respectful yet unhurried. He arrived bowing from the waist, white cloak trailing like a parchment sheet, yet to be written upon. "Your Grace," he said, "the Yunkish heralds have assembled below. They carry a peace scroll gilded on every edge." "Blah." "On every edge save honesty," she murmured. "Let them wait in the blue atrium. I would keep court there. It smells less of old blood than the throne hall." He inclined his snowy head. "As you command. And there is another matter." The old knight's hand alighted on the pommel of his sword, not gripping but seeking surety. "A raven came from Korth at sunrise. Saros Ohandaxos writes that the Carthene fleets have suspended all voyages north of Pentos. They say storms of unnatural force plagued the gullet and the Bravosi coast. Lightning white and breathless, as though the sky itself exhales fire. "They know." "Viserion," she whispered, scarcely breathing the word. She pictured him carving thermals over angry seas, framed in lightning flashes. He seeks the cold, yet winter's edge drifts south to greet him. "Some in Korth call it a curse," Sir Barristan continued. "Others a sign of God's awakening. Merchants being what they are, they care more that spice ships rot at harbor while rumors devour their purses." "Dashor. The world must learn dragons do not wait upon merchants' timetables," she answered. "Still, send parchment and quills to my solar. I shall compose letters promising indemnities for proven losses once my realm is claimed. It may stay their tongues." The old knight bowed again, but before he could withdraw, Dario Naharis strode from the shadowed arch, bells woven into his braided beard, catching first sunlight in motes of gold. His smile rode the line between insolence and admiration. "Bright morning, Daenerys of the dawn," he greeted, using one of his countless pet names for her. "I bring two gifts, a captive and a riddle. I think you will savor both." "Captive sour before midday," she said. "What prisoner?" "The Harpy whose agents sealed the harbor granaries." He gestured, and two storm crows dragged forward a man in linen robes mottled by dried sweat. A bronze mask, shaped like a woman's serene visage, lay dented at his feet. The prisoner's eyes, dark as fig wine, flicked from Dario to the queen with equal portions of hatred and panic. "Your sellswords forget we execute only after judgment," she told Dario, though part of her yearned for justice too swift for scrolls. "Yet bring him. Let dawn witness what night attempted." So they descended together through echoing stairwells where murals of harpies and chains lined the walls. Her quiet message to the city etched in blue glaze. The blue atrium stood open to sky on three sides, a reflecting pool at its heart. Slanting shafts of dawn set the water ablaze like beaten brass. Missandei already awaited, quill poised. Grey Worm flanked her left, the sunlight turning the satin of his helm to molten steel. Near the fountain stood two Yunkish envoys cloaked in perfumed silks heavy as draperies. Their faces bore lacquered calm, yet their eyes tracked the hooded captive with morbid curiosity. A small chair of carved cedar had been provided for Daenerys, plain in design. She refused the gilded monstrosities Hisdar favored. She seated herself, gesturing for the prisoner to kneel. Chains clinked, the captive complied. Daenerys studied him, younger than she expected, perhaps 22, beard trimmed, fingers stained with indigo dye used in ledger work. Not a soldier, a financier. "You know who I am," she said. "Speak your name." His jaw worked as though chewing bitterness. I was Ravash the Factor, he said. Now I imagine I am Raven's Fair. Perhaps, she allowed. You stand accused of bribing harbor masters to shutter granaries intended for freedmen, causing famine that claimed 94 lives. Do you deny this? Ravash shook his head once, eyes hollow. Why deny what a dragon queen already decided? I obeyed my masters, the great families. If I had refused, I would hang beside those harbor masters. The pyramid eats the weak. Daenerys considered the misery he helped craft. Children stiff from hunger, old men plowing for spoiled grain. Yet she heard truth in his final words. In Meereen, weakness invited obliteration, whether from harpies or from her own wrath. She rose. Her shadow fell across him. I will not feed the pyramid this dawn, she pronounced. I will break its appetite. You will not die, Ravash, yet you shall never again trade in hunger. Grey Worm, chain him to the waste wagons. For 1 year he will labor in sewers, cleansing the filth he helped breed. Each dawn he will witness the price of starving children, and each dusk he will thank the gods for mercy where none was due. Nestribunio. Gasps riffled the assembly. The Yunkai heralds exchanged uneasy glances. Mercy unsettled them more deeply than bloodshed. Grey Worm's nod conveyed acceptance without opinion. Ravash sagged. A rag pulled from a storm. Dario's lip curled, but amusement glinted beneath. Mercy bored him, yet unpredictability thrilled. She let him stew. Now, she said, turning to the envoys, Meereen greets Yunkai. Polite bows. The taller spokesman unfurled a parchment, nearly as long as his arm. Glorious Queen of the Hara, of dragons, Yunkai proposes mutual cessation of hostilities and resumption of trade conditional upon indemnification for blockade damages, and his droning recitation dissolved into background murmur. Daenerys found herself staring at the pool instead, at the ripples lapping mosaic tiles shaped like flying dragons of Valyria. One slip of morning wind scattered reflected sunlight into a fan of shards, blinding for a heartbeat. In that shimmer she saw Viserion again, soaring above glittering ice. Then the vision shifted. A swirl of black feathers and pale limbs tangled among burning snow. She blinked, and the water lay placid. Your Grace? Missandei prompted softly, quill suspended. Daenerys returned to the present. Enough. Her voice sliced across the atrium, severing the envoy's monologue. Yunkai grows bold behind distant walls. Know this, my dragon has risen. Another paces these halls. If Yunkai seeks peace, it shall dismantle its slave pens brick by brick and deliver every master's ledger to my scribes. Trade will resume when the last chain breaks. No. Outrage sputtered across perfumed faces. Yet, under the rising sun, they dared only bow. Council ended. Daenerys dismissed all but Barristan, Dario, Missandei, and Grey Worm. As the atrium cleared, she breathed the salted breeze. How long before Yunkai purchases new armies? Fewer than 6 moons, Barristan predicted. They will recruit the tall men of Norvos, or tempt the sellsword Prince of Myr, but neither shall weigh heavily against 3 dragons. Not soon. Dario smirked. If 3, there remain. 1 white serpentine ghost carves across the world. Your foes count only 2 behind these walls. She looked skyward as though vision might pierce stone and find Drogon sleeping curled on the blackened dome of the eastern hatchery. Rhaegal nested deeper still, restless but obedient. 2 is enough for Meereen, she said, and 1 more than I deserve, after the pit. Dario shifted closer, voice low. You might let them taste the wind. 2 dragons looping above Yunkai's embassies would send scribes pissing red wine. Bah. She shook her head. I would not risk them now. When I depart with my armada, I will need Drogon strong and Rhaegal trained to formation. Unleashed too early, they may drift north in search of their brother. Missandei cleared her throat, reluctant to interrupt. Your Grace, reports say Viserion circles the Bay of Seals now. Wildling refugees speak of a pale spirit burning whites on the coast. Now, Daenerys closed her eyes a moment, picturing that lonely stretch of freezing water, pine dark along the ragged shore. Her pulse quickened. as though part of her soared with him. "Then my son grows fierce," she said, "and the north knows fire." In Dementor, a world away, the sky above the night fort lit amber and gold. Jon Snow watched from the wall's highest turret, cloak snapping like a raven's wing. Viserion had returned each dusk for 4 successive nights, snatching deer from the haunted forest, roasting them mid-air before devouring. On the second night, the dragon swooped so low, the battlement torches guttered, and Jon saw his talons drip molten ice onto the paved courtyard, hissing like silver poured on snow. Bowen Marsh's outrage swelled with every roar, yet men of the Night's Watch found themselves cheering after suppressed gasps. Whispers grew that perhaps the old gods had answered where southern kings would not. Even iron-stubborn Cotter Pike sent a raven from Eastwatch. "Send your snow lizard here, we'll trade him a keg for every burned dead thing." Samwell Tarly pored over Valyrian manuscripts until deep circles ringed his eyes. Most accounts of dragon heraldry speak of colors as lineage. Sam explained to Jon inside the library. Tomes stacked high. Ale or white dragon often symbolized the moon or prophecy in certain freehold texts. This one might represent rebirth after darkness. Jon rubbed gloved fingers across stubble on his jaw. "Sam, prophecy rarely helps a man in the moment. What matters is whether we can trust him not to torch the castle or our stores before winter ends." A knock. The door opened to admit Ed Tollett. "Beg pardon, Lord Commander, but your guest stirs. He's asking for you by name." Jon bolted upright. "What guest?" "The red-haired kitten you fished from a snowdrift," Ed drawled. "Says his name is Tyrion. Though one look suggests red wine named him long before his mother did. Tyrion Lannister's in the Nightfort." Jon's voice half-cracked. Sam blinked owlishly. Ed shrugged. "Not the famous Halfman. This one's 10, maybe 11 years. Found wandering near Queenscrown with 2 broken toes and a satchel of scrolls. Smart mouth. Makes me nostalgic. Not gonna talk to wall." Jon traded a glance with Sam. "Another orphan of war," he murmured. Yet the boy somehow reached Queenscrown alone. He said a dragon guided him. Ed finished. "I think the cold's frozen his wits." Jon felt a prickle across his neck. Guided by a dragon. He thanked Ed and strode into the corridor. If children on ruined roads now claimed sudden salvation by pale wings, Viserion's legend burgeoned beyond their control. Legends bred hopes, but hopes birthed demands, and demands birthed armies. He found the child in the infirmary curled beneath wool blankets patched with crow feather motif. Freckles dusted the bridge of his nose like cinnamon on milk. His right foot bulged under splints. "You sought me?" Jon asked gently. The boy craned his neck, eyes bright with fever and wonder. "You are Jon Snow." The pale dragon circled us thrice in the dark. He drove off wolves and dead men both. In his firelight we followed him north until the wall appeared. He left then, but we understood. "We?" "My sister and I. She was slower." The snow swallowed her tracks. Tears rimmed his lashes. "Before she vanished, she begged me reach you. She said the dragon's eyes burned with your ghost inside." Jon's chest tightened. He knelt, gripping the lad's fingers. "You are safe. Rest. We will search for your sister." "How will you search snow that devours even sounds?" the boy whispered. "With dragonfire, perhaps." Yet, Jon could not promise that. Not yet. Viserion glided far above the haunted fields that once fed the Weeping Pass. His body had stretched to full hunting contour, wings wide as a Braavosi cog's triple mast, neck rippling with corrugated muscle. Frost crusted his pale scales in crystalline lace that steamed in midday sun until molten beads trickled and fell like glass shards onto the snow-blanketed barrens. He hunted herds of elk, leaving scorched craters and hissing husks. Whites gathered to the char, but found nothing left to raise. The beast learned quickly. He discovered that black blood, icy ichor of others, exploded to acrid steam at his flame. When pale riders approached, he stooped like a white hawk. unleashing a cone of searing heat so fierce it sheared limb from limb, leaving only puddles that cooled into obsidian-rimed hollows. The others withdrew each time, but not before blue eyes lingered on him with an unfathomable calculation. Not all watchers were dead. One morning, as Viserion drank from a half-frozen tarn, a party of free folk stumbled upon him. They were ragged survivors from then, cheeks hollow, arrows few a year. At first, they quaked before his coiling neck, but when the boldest among them loosed a shout praising Flame Worm of the Dawn, the others joined in, banging shields and staffs in rough cadence. Viserion did not burn them. He tilted his head, membranous ears flicking. Their reverence, carried on hoarfrost breath, felt familiar to a beast whose mother's heartbeat had taught him the cadence of command. He rose into the air, executed a slow circle, and vanished north. The thens knelt as though before a godstone. Within days, their tale seated every wildling camp clustered south of the wall's breaches. A red-bearded giant named Tormund Giantsbane slapped Jon Snow's shoulder at council fire. The bairns sing of a white dragon come to lead free folk south. They say it's the herald of the Pale Queen. His eyes twinkled. "That be you, Crow?" "I wield no dragon," Jon answered, though part of him wondered whether the beast answered some silent chord in his blood, no less than in Daenerys. Fire and ice, two halves of a prophecy none fully grasped. Win! In Meereen's blackness of new moon, Daenerys visited the hatchery deep beneath the pyramid. Obsidian lanterns flecked sparks across the cavernous chamber where Rhaegal snoozed atop volcanic sand. The green dragon coiled his tail languidly as she approached. Drogon occupied a higher perch, massive wings folded but trembling occasionally with dream flicks. Both still remembered their brother's exodus. Drogon hissed low whenever Rhaegal's eyes slid toward the entry passage anew. A sibling's tension scented the air. She knelt, cheeks brushed by ash. "Your brother carves a road for us," she whispered in High Valyrian. "Soon you will join him, but only when I bid. Until then, grow strong." She broke a seal on a jug of seasoned goat blood, pouring it into a stone trough. Rhaegal's head dipped languorously to lap. She stroked a ridge of green gold plating. Warmth pulsed under her palm like a smoldering log. An echo of wings overcame the silence. Soft, distant at first, then thunderous. For a breath she thought Drogon had roused, but the sound came from beyond the passage. A moment later, a swirl of sand gusted in, scattering embers. Archibald Euronwood barreled down the stairs, cloak flapping like a crow's ragged sail, a parchment brandished. His Dornish cheeks shone with sweat. "Your Grace," he panted. "A rider from Volantis. Urgent." She accepted the scroll, snapping the wax. The seal bore no house crest, only a spiral sun of unknown omen. The writing inside was scratch-sharp Valyrian. "Fire walks upon snow. The dead gather between Nightfort and Icemark. Pale wings scorch, but one flame cannot hold the storm. Come den." No signature. Only a smear of crimson at the end, as though the quill had broken skin. Her gaze found Drogon's in the shadows overhead. His pupils dilated until only twin infernos remained. The message rattled inside her bones. "One flame cannot hold the storm." She rose, pulse roaring. "Summon my fleet captains," she ordered. "And Cerberistan. We sail in 3 days." Archibald's brows shot up. "But Yunkai will send spears slower than winter sends wraiths. The dead do not draft treaties. I will answer the North's call." He bowed, but questions clung to his frown. She ignored them. Her mind leapt ahead, hatching battle plans in frigid valleys, establishing supply lines with nothing but shattered keeps for depots, forging unlikely alliances with houses that still called her father Meh. Later that night, alone upon the terrace overlooked by shattered harpy statues, she allowed herself to weep, not from fear, but from the immensity of choice. Every destiny she carried, from the chainbreaker of Slaver's Bay to the rightful queen of Westeros, now had a single throat: winter beyond the wall. If that throat was not cut, all the crowns in every dream would melt to slag. A pale wind blew from the north as though stirred by distant wings. She closed her eyes and heard it murmur a name older than language. Ziltes, Dawnbringer. Was it the name of her dragon, or of herself? Either way, she must answer. 1. 3 days later, the harbors of Meereen thrummed. Salt winds slapped banners emblazoned with the three-headed dragon, though some bore new color. A third head painted pale gold on white, honoring the sun born north. The Unsullied marched in phalanx, shields resonating like sea drums. Dothraki Khalasars lined the quays, their braids clacking as they eyed ships with suspicion. More comfortable on horse, they would board only under threat, but aboard they would serve as shock troops. Dario oversaw last-minute loading of blazing spear, a cog outfitted with catapults. Grey Worm inspected lines of barrel-tipped scorpions. Barristan trod the gangways, conferring with 5 seasoned captains. Missandei orchestrated quartermasters armed with ledgers of grain, dried fish, and salt pork. An exodus of ambition and desperation. Drogon alone remained loose, circling high above sails like a black thunderhead. His presence whipped wind into vortexes that rattled masts. Sailors flinched, yet each time he stooped, he spread his wings to arrest descent mere yards above deck, issuing a gruff rumble of approval before vaulting skyward again. Rhaegal waited in the cargo hold of the flagship, the Azure Wind. Iron latticework reinforced the hull. The deck above had been cut with a hatch. A risk, but if southern waters frothed with storms born of Viserion's wake, 2 dragons free in the sky might steady hearts. That night, Daenerys convened final council in the flagship's cabin. Around the table sat Barristan, Dario, Grey Worm, Missandei. Tyrion Lannister, arrived 2 days earlier by swift galley from Pentos, and Archibald Yoronwood. Tyrion lifted a goblet, sniffed the wine, and quipped, "I once promised myself never again to cross the summer sea with a Targaryen dragon above deck. But promises are like chains of cohor, fine until they snap." She allowed a smile. "You came quickly." "I smelled winter on the wind," he said, eyes glinting. "And rumor speaks of pale beasts scorching the shore of Skagos. I would see this miracle before a white gnaws my toes." Grey Worm unrolled a map. "Sail north along the coast of Pentos, then across the narrow sea, land at White Harbor," he suggested. "From there, march to Winterfell for resupply." "Ambitious," Tyrion observed, "but White Harbor is blockaded by half the Ironborn fleet. Euron Greyjoy delights in choking ports like a crab." Dario tapped the parchment north of Dragonstone. Dragonstone is symbolic. Aegon's first landing. Garrison small, castle strong only if manned. Retake it, rally banners under your father's sigil, then push up the King's Road. Swine. She weighed options. Dragonstone's volcanic labyrinths would shelter her dragons. Its forges could craft dragon glass from the island's obsidian. Yet it lay south of the wall by leagues enough for entire wars to bloom and wilt before she arrived. White Harbor offered proximity, but also entanglement. Ser Barristan cleared his throat. "Might I suggest we split forces? A vanguard sails swift to Eastwatch with Rhaegal for escort. The larger host secures Dragonstone. Your Grace may decide later which theater demands your presence most." Missandei's voice cut gentle but firm. "And who commands the vanguard if the Queen lingers south?" "Grey Worm," Barristan answered without pause. None more steadfast. "And Rhaegal?" Tyrion asked. "Will he answer to Grey Worm?" Daenerys interjected. "Drogon answers only to me. Rhaegal obeys when Drogon shows him who leads. A dragon will not serve any but blood of the dragon." Silence blossomed. All eyes found Tyrion, whose lineage paraded suspicion. His mother Joanna, rumored to have caught Erisai, whispers of bastardy. He raised one sardonic brow. Best not test ancient gossip on a battlefield. Perhaps leave the green beast chained till the Queen herself crosses the bight. "Enough," she said gently. "We sail in strength together. Dragonstone first, then north. Should the wall fall before we reach it, we will still wield the only fire strong enough to avenge it." They dispersed to final preparations. Alone, she donned a cloak, lined with silver fox fur, gift from Tormo the Norvoshi. Mirror steel clasps kept the weight over her shoulders like drifts of resolve. She stepped onto the starboard balcony where moonlight spilled across black water. Drogon sailed overhead, eclipsing the stars. She sensed Viserion then, a faint tug inside her marrow. She let her breath still, listening. Images whispered. A distant fortress of ice under strobe flashes of aurora. Silhouettes of shambling corpses gathering in tracks of wind-scoured snow. A white dragon prowling ruined towers alone. But also she felt Jon Snow, his heartbeat crisp as frost, thrumming with duty. Fear coiled through her. Would he greet her as savior or rival? A splash. A dark shape wrestled onto the deck rail. It was Tyrion, clutching a wineskin, eyes soft. "I once thought all dragons gone," he said. "Now one roams the night north of the world, and two perch here. Strange how hope returns disguised as terror. They will learn hope soon," she whispered. "The north first, then all the kingdoms." He eyed her, lantern light warring with night's shadow across his face. "And if the north spurns your gift?" Stannis burned men beneath Melisandre's spells, and still called it salvation. "Meereen?" Daenerys studied the dark horizon. "If fire and ice cannot join, the dark between will swallow both. I do not intend to be swallowed, or to watch another be swallowed in my stead." She left him then, the deck creaking beneath her boots. Somewhere below, sailors sang shanties laced with fear. Tomorrow the fleet would brave seas haunted by storms unnatural. She would ride Drogon at mast height to cow the waves. And Viserion would feel her nearing, wing beats alight inside his chest. She must believe that. At Castle Black, the sky cracked with thunder beyond the Frostfangs. Jon Snow stood atop the gatehouse as pale lightning etched the clouds. A savage wind tossed his cloak and made the torches writhe. From eastward came a roar, a ripple that curled marrow. Viserion burst from clouds, banking above the wall where watchfires sputtered. He hovered, wings pummeling snow into spirals, then descended slowly until talons scraped the iced crest 30 yards away. Flames flickered in his throat like a forge's core. Jon approached, every instinct screaming retreat, yet another half pulling him forward. Ghost prowled at his side, tail low. The dragon's eyes locked on Jon. A rumble traveled the ramparts. He stopped 10 paces away. Dragon heat washed over him, balmy as river-run summer. Jon raised a gloved hand, palm outward. "Easy, friend." His breath plumed. Viserion's pupils widened. He lowered his neck fractionally. Flakes sizzled on his snout. "Easy," Jon repeated. "If you understand, blink." Absurd, but he tried. The dragon's left eyelid shuddered, then opened. One deliberate blink. Shock roared through Jon's veins. He swallowed. "Can you take a message to your—" He did not say mother. Too presumptuous. To Daenerys Targaryen. Another blink. Hope dared flicker. Jon exhaled slowly. "Tell her the wall stands for now, but the dead muster in tens of thousands at the gorge. Tell her we need fire by the full moon." The dragon tilted his head as though hearing words inside the wind. Then he issued a guttural sound, half growl, half chirp, and sprang skyward. His updraft blew snow from Jon's shoulders. Jon watched him vanish into strata of storm. He turned to Ghost, heart hammering. "If he delivers it, we may yet see a dawn." Ghost stared, unblinking. Somewhere deep below the wall, a horn sounded. One blast. Ranger returning. Jon felt the tremor of omen. Perhaps the dragon carried more than one message. Meereen. Viserion flew like a spear through thickening storm. He felt the dead pressing south, a tide of thirsting cold creeping across the haunted forest. Their countless footfalls quivered along ancient ley lines older than men, lines he sensed in his bones. Yet he sensed something else now too. His mother rising on yet unseen horizons. Her heartbeat magnified in his mind as though he flew within her chest. He angled southwest, drawn by that pulse. Winds buffeted, but he rode them, a shard of lightning incarnate. The storm brewed blacker ahead, but inside him glowed a core of molten promise. For dragons were forged to bridge distances no map measured, between mother and child, between life and night unending. He roared once, a clarion knell that rolled across snowscapes, carrying words none could parse yet all could feel. Dawn will come. Ba-dee. Dawn broke crimson over the gulf of grief as the Targaryen fleet slipped its moorings. A hush lingered beneath the creak of standing rigging, as though even the decks held their breath. Daenerys stood on the forecastle of the azure wind, silver fox cloak snapping behind her, eyes fixed on the ribbon of horizon that glimmered like a drawn blade. Drogon circled high above the tallest mast, a ragged black corona gnawing at sunrise. His wings beat deliberate, raising gusts that rattled every furled sail along the line. Astern, 44 ships unfurled scarlet and white banners trimmed by the new third sigil, a pale dragon superimposed upon the three-headed red. Long gilded horns brayed farewell. In reply, quayside crowds raised a roar that quivered through the hullboard. Children waved rags of blue silk until distance made them motes. A dozen slaver spies watched from shaded arcades, frantic quills scrawling promises of gold for news. Too old before ink dried. Yet the queen had left them a gift of dread. Rhaegal erupted from the pyramid's highest terrace moments after the flagship gained open water, green wings tearing sky. He dove across the harbor mouth, loosed a plume of emerald flame that sent gulls shrieking and boiled spray from the waves, then climbed to ride Drogon's slipstream. 2 dragons now escorted the fleet. Meereen's stone quays echoed with silence. Yunkai envoys fled that same afternoon, not even bothering to retrieve their litter. Wind held steady from the southeast. Captain Ralmoro, a scarling Pentoshi with the weather-creased face of driftwood, laid a course hugging Valyrian shoals until sunset, then out into the summer sea proper, bound north-northwest. Daenerys remained on deck until the Great Pyramid dwindled to a golden shard, and she could at last let the city's weight fall from her shoulders. But relief proved fragile. The farther Meereen slipped behind, the louder winter seemed to breathe ahead. After nightfall, she descended to her cabin but found no rest in the silken bunk. Instead, she paced the length of the wardroom, fingers brushing the grain of the map table as though stroking a restive mount. Nisandai entered near midnight, bearing a basin of warm water. "You have not closed your eyes, Your Grace," she said. "The night is long on open sea, but longer still without sleep." Daenerys smiled wearily. "My dreams are leagues ahead of us, dancing on frost. Sleep would only hasten their march." Nisandai set the basin down, eyes shining with gentle worry. "If the mind roams too far, the body will stumble," she cautioned. "Your army follows your breath." "I know." Daenerys exhaled, a thread of laughter. "I will rest soon." She cupped water, splashed her face, and shut her lids a heartbeat. Images sprang unbidden. Viserion perched upon a white rampart, auroras chasing each other behind his wings. Jon Snow standing amid swirling snow, hand raised as if in benediction or challenge. A horn blast rolled across an unseen waste. She jerked awake, wet-cheeked, heart pounding. Nisandai's hand drifted to her shoulder. "You felt him again?" "Eh," she whispered. "Not fear. Something nearer to warning." They said little else. Once alone, Daenerys stripped cloak and cuirass and lay supine on the bunk. But slumber remained distant. Why? On the second day, storm veils gathered where sky met sea. High, bruised anvils swelling faster than the charts predicted. Tyrion joined the queen at the quarterdeck rail, squinting into rising chop. "But we sail the watery footprints of your wayward son," he said. Wet curls plastered to his brow. "Where dragon passes, clouds conspire. Useful to frighten foes, less pleasant to those of us whose guts prefer wine to brine." "Ow!" She braced as a swell lifted the hull. "Learn to love the taste," she said. "We may swallow leagues of it before land." Ralmoro shouted orders. Sailors scrambled to shorten sail. Drogon shrieked raptor loud overhead, banking askew of the clouds as though offended by their boldness. Rhaegal followed, curious. Sheets of rain charged in wild columns across the deck within the hour. Lightning spidered low. White veins lacing charcoal vapor, Tyrion swore the flashes bore the silhouette of a pale dragon flitting in and out of the storm wall. The tempest hammered them 2 days and a night. 2 cogs broke masts. 1 Myrish galley drifted off formation until Regal herded it back like a shepherd hound, browbeating the terror-stricken crew with bellows of fire across their bow. Yet, no ship foundered. Some sailors swore Drogon wrestled the storm itself. Each time he dove into thunderheads, the worst gusts veered aside. By dawn of the 5th day, the sea lay calm, as hammered tin. Behind them the sky still boiled. Ahead, a crisp wind smelled faintly, not of salt alone, but of pine. Even hardened mariners blinked, for pine carried only when one neared Westeros. Daenerys tasted the scent like promise. She climbed to the top castle and shaded her eyes. No land yet, but she felt it under the keel. An inexorable pull, as though the continent itself had reached invisible fingers across swells. Over the shivering sea Viserion knifed through starless dark. He had flown since sunset with no pause, the message beating in his skull. Fire must reach the wall by the next full moon. He knew nothing of moons or deadlines, but urgency rode his muscles. Lightning flicked from the frigid clouds, his wingbeats carved apart. Below, the water lay black and wrinkled, a vast mirror broken by whitecaps. The air smelled of iron and something older. Stone blood, perhaps, the taste of primordial magma buried beneath world's crust. That scent tugged his head west, and by instinct he angled toward it. Minutes or hours later, time meaningless to a creature of sky, moonlight broke through rents in the cloud deck. There, spread like a giant's anvil, lay an island ringed by sheer cliffs of black glass. Dragonstone, volcanic thorn in the narrow sea. Its towers jutted like fangs, windows vacant, ramparts wind-scoured and lichen-grimed. Yet still heat whispered from fissures hidden beneath basalt slopes, vents exhaled ghost steam into the night. Viserion circled once. A memory not his own shivered through his marrow, eggs lain in obsidian cradles, fires stoked by Targaryen queens long dead, hatchlings mewling in stone pens. Ghost smoke of ancestral blood lingered. He banked in wide Lizzie arcs, uncertain. This was not yet the place to deliver the message, but something within urged him to mark it. He dove close enough to ripple the waves with his descent, skimmed above the castle's central keep, and exhaled a brief tongue of flame that painted molten runes across the highest parapet. Then he wheeled north again, into a sky that smelled of coming winter. His passing did not go unnoticed. In a wind-blasted watchtower ruined since Stannis Baratheon's exodus, a small clump of ragged men huddled around a driftwood fire. Their sigil, 3 black horses on gold, marked them as far-strayed Baratheon retainers. They looked up when sudden heat licked their cheeks. At first they saw only the glow, but the crack of air as the dragon climbed seared its silhouette across their retinas. Men screamed. One fled the tower, tumbling down scree until he vanished into surf. The rest prayed or cursed. By morning, ravens flapped from the castle, each bearing frantic scraps of parchment proclaiming, "Dragon above Dragonstone." One raven flapped north, one south, another east toward King's Landing. At the Red Keep's small council, the news detonated like wildfire. Queen Regent Cersei Lannister paced the long oak table, lips pressed bloodless as she listened to Pycelle's wheezing recitation. "A pale dragon, your grace. Described as white shot with gold, sighted at Dragonstone before dawn." "White," Cersei hissed. "Not black. White, my lady daughter. Witnesses, unanimous. Manuan." She halted, drumming manicured nails on the map of Westeros inlaid upon the table. "Then this is no rumor. The Witch Queen from Slaver's Bay comes westward." She spun toward her brother. "Jaime, summon every Scorpion crew from the city walls, all to the coast roads within the week." Jaime, one-handed and scarred, met her gaze without flinching. "Bolts enough to fell a hill may not pierce a dragon's hide, sister." "Then aim for its rider." She spat. "Dead queens cannot command." Qyburn coughed politely, the hush of a grave opening. "Might I suggest we study the beast first? The white one seems different. Pale scale may mark youth or weakness. A single specimen may be lured, trapped. Spare me your laboratory. Cersei snapped. We break it or burn it. Nothing in between. Across the bay bells tolled midday, but in the council chamber the sound felt more like funeral chimes. When, 9 days after departing Meereen, Daenerys sighted Tyro's green and violet coast slipping astern d'Ajto. The fleet had skirted Mir's galleon patrols by hugging shoals where draft ran shallow. 2 Lysine corsairs drifted too close. A lone pass from Drogon sent them wallowing away, sails aflame. By dusk of the 10th day, a briny chill overtook the air. Narrower seas, colder currents. Dolphins replaced turtles. Smugglers' lanterns glimmered in coves like foxfire. Night descended blindfold black, scoured by scudding overcast that veiled stars. Near midnight, Daenerys climbed to the quarterdeck again. Her boots slid on dew-slick planks. Tyrion snoozed beneath a tarp, wineskin clutched like a devout icon. Ramoro gripped the wheel, humming a Pentoshi dirge. Beyond, only the hush of froth and the creak of rope. Then Drogon growled, an undertone felt more than heard. He banked starboard, black wings whispering turbulence over the deck. Rhaegal followed, keening. Sailors froze mid-task. Daenerys scanned the cloud deck. Darkness parted. A slim crescent moon bled pale light upon a single shape dead ahead. Viserion, gliding low toward the flagship like a comet of ivory. A gasp rippled through the topside. The dragons shrilled in greeting. Daenerys' throat tightened. She extended an arm, though distance rendered the gesture futile. Yet Viserion dipped his head as if bowing, then swooped across the mainmast, and settled beyond the stern claws cutting white furrows through wake spray until he perched upon the aftercastle roof. The deck erupted. Cheers, prayers, curses. Sailors scrambled up ratlines for a closer view, until gray worms barked order restored discipline. Daenerys hurried aft, heart hammering. She climbed the ladder. Viserion loomed above the tiller like moonlight forged to living sinew. Eyes of molten amber fixed upon her. A croon poured from his throat, soft by dragon measure, but thunder in her chest. She reached, pressed both palms to the warm ridge above his nostrils. The world narrowed to an echo chamber of shared pulse. Images flooded her mind. Jon Snow on wall rampart. Whites massing in chasms near the gorge. Wind-shredded banners snapped over black ice. A half-moon hanging pale. Urgency, thick as clotted milk. She inhaled sharply. Storm's End, she murmured, though she did not know why the castle leapt to memory. Viserion flared his nostrils, issued a brittle hiss. Then his wings flexed, and he half unfolded, balancing on the narrow roof as easily as gulls upon cliff ledges. Tyrion clambered up behind her. He carries news? Ah. Summons, she breathed. Full moon soon. Fire needed at the wall. How soon? Tyrion squinted at the horizon, though nothing there could answer. 14 nights at most. Her jaw set. We cannot reach Eastwatch by sea in that span, not with the Ironborn lurking and the winds contrary. We must take Dragonstone first and ride from there. Tyrion's lips pursed. Dragonstone lies a day's sail now if wind holds. Yet a day lost anchoring, then up the King's Road. 40 nights at march speed. Then not by March, she said. Drogon landed beside his sibling with a thud like drums. We 3 will fly. Grey Worm continues fleet to Dragonstone. Tyrion with him. Forge dragonglass, rally houses. I take Drogon. Rhaegal bears supplies in net bundles. We reach the wall before the moon is round. Tyrion stared. 2,000 leagues of open sky, your grace. Little rest, no roost, winter air colder than tomb steel. Even dragon blood chills. We will manage, she said. Fire can warm its own marrow. Grey Worm climbed to the aftercastle. Helm removed. Expression carved of granite. Queen cannot fly alone, he stated. Unsullied guard until death. She touched his armored arm. You guard the realm I leave behind. Keep our ships safe. Hold Dragonstone. He bowed, but steel rang through his voice. As you command. Breath of fire. Heart of Unsullied. By dawn, Preparations rang out like anvils across the flagship. Rhaegal was coaxed into a cradle of knotted rigging strung between mainmast and mizzen, where sailors lashed sealed casks of water and smoked beef beneath his belly. Drogon accepted heavier loads, bundles of furs, toolkits, maester scroll chests packed in oiled leather. Missandei drafted letters to be carried by ravens from Dragonstone once the fleet arrived, proclaiming Daenerys' intent to aid the North against darkness. Ser Barristan argued to accompany the Queen in flight, but she forbade it. Weight must be spent on provisions, not honor. He would lead the vanguard at Dragonstone and hold Bastion until her return. At midday, Viserion launched first, banking high to test the air. Drogon followed. Shadow, swallowing half the deck. Sailors raised spears in salute. Daenerys climbed into the saddle, rig strapped behind Drogon's neck spines. Thighs squeezing scale tough as corundum. Rhaegal bounded to the rail, green wings thrumming. A final look down. Tyrion on the quarterdeck, waving. She raised a gauntleted hand. Then sky swallowed sound. Drogon surged upward, rigging snapping free. Rhaegal lumbered after, rising slower under burden. Viserion corkscrewed around them, ivory comet escorting. 3 dragons streaked northwest, leaving wakes of steam where their breath ignited frigid upper air. Below, the fleet dwindled to toy boats. Soon even the sea seemed small. Wind sharpened to daggers, but fur-lined leathers shielded her. Drogon climbed above cloud stratum where sun blazed unhindered. There they rode a torrent of jet stream rushing toward Westeros. Sails of flesh and bone, replacing canvas. Hours stretched into an endless cadence of wingbeat, heartbeat. She lost sense whether wind noise roared externally or inside her skull. Only occasional dips into lower air let Rhaegal drink water from nets swung beneath. She forced sips from a goat skin tied to her saddle. Icy droplets numbed tongue. Thunderheads brewed westward by dusk, but moonrise tinted them pewter. Below, flickering islands of yellow light betrayed fishing hamlets along the Stormland's coast. Drogon descended to catch an onshore gale. Lightning strobed, revealing peninsulas like broken teeth. Rain lashed in sheets. Rhaegal's load shifted. Ropes groaned. Viserion slid beneath to steady his brother with buffeting downdrafts. Dragonstone's black silhouette clawed at the clouds near midnight. Steam vents glowed lambent orange along the slopes, guiding them to roost. Drogon landed atop the stone drum tower in a shudder of broken slates. Rhaegal crashed onto the roof of the Sea Dragon Tower, scattering dust of decades. Viserion perched on the King's Gate parapet like ghost sentinel. Daenerys slid stiff-limbed from the saddle. Her feet buckled, the roof sloped treacherous. She knelt, palms against wet slate, lungs aflame. The air reeked of sulfur but felt mercifully mild after high altitudes. She forced herself upright and staggered to the tower's crenellation. Below, courtyards lay dark save for lone torch flickers where the ragged garrison scrambled, yelling. She spread arms, voice hoarse yet clear. Daenerys Stormborn claims her birthright. Lay down arms. No blood need drench these stones. Echoes flung her cry back. Moments later, a lantern bobbed as the Castellan emerged, draped in ill-fitting mail. He knelt within torchlight, throwing keys upon flagstones. No soul wished parley with dragons perched overhead. Yet dawn could not wait. Within the hour, barricades were opened, stairwells relit. Daenerys descended to the chamber of the painted table, that vast jade likeness of Westeros carved by Aegon's hand. Dust filmed its lacquer, but outlines remained vivid beneath her fingertips. Eastwatch glimmered faintly under candlelight. The wall reared up. Ivory paint chipped like melting snow. She traced from Dragonstone to Breakneck Hills, measuring distances as her ancestors did. Not by leagues of land, but by the span of dragon wings. Rhaegal's burden would lighten after leaving perishable stores at Dragonstone. With only dried meat, weapons, and minimal furs, they could shave weight. Yet each dragon would still fly half a world in winter gusts. Could they cross entire kingdoms before moon's fullness? She counted days by knuckle. 8 until half moon, 13 to full. Footsteps approached. Tyrion slipped in, trailed by an exhilarated grin. We docked an hour past. The garrison yielded without quarrel. He poured wine from a dusty flagon. "I toast your return to ancestral halls, your grace, though I dare say you did not linger for tour." She accepted, sipped, coughed on the musty bouquet. "We leave by midday. Have scribes prepare letters to lords of the Reach, the Stormlands, and Dorne. Call banners to Dragonstone, under Barristan's command. Mine will join after the wall is secured." "It's men." Tyrion whistled. "3 dragons above the wall. Will make quite the letter of introduction." "2 dragons," she corrected. "Regal cannot bear the cold with added stores. Viserion was born to it. Drogon will carry me in a company of 6. Healers, scouts. I would take you, but King's roads need your tongue as much as my wings." He raised brows. "I yield to necessity, and sober fear of frostbite." He drained wine. "Should White Harbor rally to you, it may open sea lanes for aid. But mind the Manderless, they feast you with one hand, fleece with the other." She allowed herself a brittle laugh. "I have danced with fleece masters in Meereen. Wool sisters may prove simple after harpies." Footfalls echoed again. Grey Worm entered, helm under arm. Supplies stowed. "Smiths found old dragonglass mine still intact, your grace. Barracks hold forges. We craft spearheads already." Good. She pointed at the western coast on the table. "When the rest of the fleet arrives, strengthen Dragonstone. Build stockpiles. Mostly food, fur, and iron. Send ravens daily north and south. If King's Landing answers Yonkai's whispers, we must know." Grey Worm touched fist to chest. "Storm's End still flies stag banners," he offered. "Word is the castle garrison small and hungry since Shireen's death. They may ally if promised grain." "Then promise," she said. "Use my name to feed them." Rah. Moon climbed from the sea like a tarnished coin half full. Daenerys slept at dawn after bathing in volcanic spring water. She dreamed not of dragons but of snowflakes swirling amid roses of winter blue. When she woke near noon, Viserion roosted on the windowsill, head cocked. He had dropped something at her feet, a shard of crystal, milky with frost. She lifted it, perplexed. Her breath fogged its surface. Within, minute shapes writhed. Tiny flakes trapped yet alive. Dragon glass and ice fused? A new alloy? She stored it in a velvet pouch. Mind racing. By midday the sky cleared to porcelain glare. Drogon and Viserion fed on sides of beef, dragged from cellars. Rhaegal basked on lava-warmed cliff. Daenerys, clad in layered whites and grays, mounted Drogon. She carried an obsidian-bladed spear wrought that morning. 6 riders joined. Jorah Mormont arrived from Old Town under Raven recall. 2 Dothraki blood riders, 1 healer from Eneth, and the twins Alan and Arik of the Stormcrows, nimble scouts. She addressed Barristan at the gate. "Hold this place as if my life rests within its stones." He bowed deep, white hair stirring. "It does, your grace, and the world's." With a cry, she spurred Drogon skyward. Viserion arrowed alongside. Rhaegal remained behind, sentinel over newborn forges. The company banked north-northwest, cutting across Blackwater Bay's chop, past drift smoke curling from King's Landing's chimneys. She glimpsed the Red Keep's crimson banners fluttering like wounds. Far below, small folk halted in streets. Jaws, slack as dragons, shadowed their roofs. No Scorpion crews fired, perhaps stunned, perhaps unprepared. Tyrion had predicted chaos. He was correct. By the time sentries manned crossbows, dragons were gone. Slipping over Crownlands forests, where gold leaves fell across frost-silvered grass. South wind aided them for hours until turning contrary near dusk. Drogon muscled through. Viserion slid ahead, scouting ridges with predatory purpose. That night, they camped on a rugged hill east of River Run. Fire from dragon breath, melted snow for watered horse oats. Jorah reported ironborn raids thicker along riverlands. Castles burned, peasants fled. Daenerys listened, eyes on the North Star. Every tale of pain fueled her resolve. Next dawn they crossed the neck. Fog clung to fetid fens like damp shrouds. Crannogmen blew reed horns from watchtowers. None dared hinder. By midday 3 bolts hissed upward from an abandoned Frey fort, but Drogon burned them mid-flight, scattering embers into bog. No more shots followed. Third day brought them to Last Hearth, Lord Umber's seat. Smoke rose, gates smashed, courtyards littered with carcasses rimed in ice. Waits. Daenerys circled once, heart clenching. Viserion dove without cue, torching corpses until snow melted to slurry. Yet signs of survivors, none. They pressed on. Every league north grew bleaker. Snow deepened, rivers choked in ice. Dead villages marked progress like counting stones. Jorah's cheeks chapped raw. The healer's tears froze silver on lashes, but Drogon's heat warded them. They slept in circles beneath his wings, warm enough to dream. On the 6th day they sighted the towers of the wall, shimmering sapphire under pale sunlight. Ghost winds skirled. Ravens wheeled in restless flocks. Daenerys urged Drogon lower. As they neared Eastwatch's ruined gate, horns sounded. 1 blast, then 2. To her shock, a 3rd followed. A call reserved for others. Out of the courtyard rushed black-cloaked figures, dragging braziers ablaze with pitch. Jon Snow himself strode at their head, wearing dark leathers rimmed in frost fur, Longclaw at hip. He halted as Drogon landed in an explosion of spindrift. Fire from the dragon's belly vaporized snow around. Daenerys dismounted in a plume of steam. She removed her hood, silver-gold braid spilling across shoulders. Jon stepped forward, eyes vast with relief, and something deeper. He bowed, not with courtly flourish, but a warrior's nod of shared burden. "You came," he breathed. "Your raven found me," she answered. "And your message carried a dragon's wings." Behind them, Viserion roared greeting. Jon looked up, awe softening caution. "He has defended us these 10 nights. But the dead gather at the gorge, numbers uncountable." Distant, thunder cracked. A wall of black clouds massed beyond Skirling Pass. Within that heart, pale shadows writhed. Daenerys placed her hand on Jon's forearm. Heat met chill, each neither yielding nor dominating. "Then let us burn a path." Snowflakes spiraled between them, melting before they touched ground. Far above, 3 dragons wheeled against storm. White, green, and black. Guardians of a dawn yet unrealized.